Now, a few weeks back, I made a video titled The NFL Supplemental Draft Explained. In said video, obviously, I explained how the NFL Supplemental Draft works. Now, if you haven't seen that one, I suggest you go check it out real quick. I'll leave it pinned in the comment. That way you can kind of know how this thing works, how it started, because it's a little bit different from the regular NFL draft. In that video, I asked y'all if you wanted to hear some of the craziest stories from the supplemental draft. Y'all responded, so here we are. Now, literally the very first story ever from the supplemental draft, the story of how it started, is pretty crazy in itself. 1977, cat named Al Hunter, running back from Notre Dame, gets kicked out of Notre Dame for constantly having chicks in his room. But by the time he gets kicked out, the deadline to enter the NFL draft has already passed. So the NFL starts the supplemental draft as a way to get star running back Al Hunter in. He ends up going to the Seahawks, has a mediocre career, the rest is history. Now, with that being said, there's plenty of stories of guys who, unlike Al, went into the NFL and made waves, either on the field or sometimes just in the media. We got everything from Hall of Famers to dudes that was always in trouble and everything in between. So sit back, chill, and let me tell you some of the craziest stories from the supplemental draft. Cue the wing.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
All right, real quick, before we jump in, I gotta give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, SeatGeek, man. Huge shout out to those guys. They brought me and my boy KTO out to the NFC Championship game. We had pregame sideline access. They set us up in the suite to check out the game, man. It was dope. Amazing game until the unbelievable missed call down at the end, but a great experience nonetheless, made possible by the guys at SeatGeek. Now, if you're not familiar with SeatGeek, it's basically an app designed to make your ticket buying process as simple as possible. They aggregate tickets from all over the internet, putting them all in one place to simplify the process. They also grade each ticket on a scale from 1 to 100, allowing you to quickly assess the value of each deal. Lastly, they allow you to preview the view of each seat so that you know what it's going to look like before you even get there. If you want to download the SeatGeek app, all you got to do is click the link in the description, and don't forget to use my code FlemLo for $20 off your first purchase. Now, for those of y'all curious, yes, I did vlog this whole trip, and I'm going to have the full vlog up on my vlog channel, Base for Impact, within the next few days whenever I get over this little sickness that I'm dealing with. If you haven't subscribed over there already, make sure you do so. Without further ado, let's get it. All right, to start the list off, we got none other than Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Yeah, that's right. Cris Carter was taken in the supplemental draft. He basically accepted some bread from an agent and was ruled ineligible for his final season at his beloved Ohio State. The 1987 supplemental draft is easily the greatest supplemental draft of all time. That one draft actually provides 2 of the 3 stories that made this video. In 1987, 28 NFL teams chose not to partake in the supplemental draft as they were protesting the decision to let non-college graduates into the league. So the Eagles easily snatched up Cris Carter, only beating a 4th round pick. A few years later, one of the teams who didn't participate in the 87 supplemental draft picked Cris up off waivers after he had been cut due to his drug issues. That team, of course, was the Minnesota Vikings, where Cris went on to make 8 Pro Bowls, mentor possibly the greatest wide receiver of all time, and make the NFL Hall of Fame, making him the only Hall of Famer ever to be selected in the supplemental draft. Next guy on the list was actually taken the exact same year as Cris Carter, the Boz, Brian Bosworth. Now, Brian Bosworth was that dude, and in the same supplemental draft that Hall of Famer Cris Carter had a 4th round pick bid for him, Brian Bosworth had a 1st round pick bid for him. The Boz, aka King of the 80s, was actually driven by his own diva mentality to enter the supplemental draft. See, after a stellar college career, this man sent letters to a bunch of teams saying that if they drafted him, he would not play. This is a linebacker, not a quarterback, mind you. In an attempt to control his future, which I guess I can't be mad at that, this man said he would only play for the Rams, the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants, or the Eagles. Now, the Buccaneers had the first pick in the standard NFL draft that year, and they were already on record saying they were going to take Vinny Testaverde. Who had the next two picks? The Colts and the Bills. And the boss was like, nah. So when he saw that, he decided to enter the supplemental draft and send those letters to all the teams that he didn't want to play for. Now, the year before, the Seahawks were 10-6. They had 37-1 odds for getting the first pick in the supplemental draft, but guess what? They got the first pick in the supplemental draft. And they didn't hesitate. They proceeded to draft Brian Bosworth despite the letters that he sent. They didn't care. So Brian was like, cool. He threatened to sit out the entire season. But that's when the Seahawks pulled up with a record-setting contract, at least for the time. 10 years, $11 million. In 1987, that was the biggest contract the Seahawks had ever offered any player. It was also the biggest contract any rookie had ever gotten across the entire league. Now, the first thing this man did after trying to force his way to a certain team, holding out, and then getting this huge contract, he decided his next move would be to sue the NFL. Now, during that time, linebackers couldn't wear numbers that were in the 40s. Brian Bosworth wore 44 in college. Now, he wanted brand uniformity. He knew he could sell more jerseys if he wore the same number that he had in college. So he sued the league for the right to wear that number. Unfortunately for Brian, he lost. So he decided to wear number 55. Now, there's no way I can really sugarcoat this. The Boz was a bust. He only played 2 years of his 10-year contract, and dude didn't even come close to living up to the hype. But he was a Hall of Fame finesser. He set up a scheme that got him the biggest rookie contract ever, and he once even had his own company sell shirts that said, "Ban the Boz." These shirts was bought for $15 a pop by opposing fans, all in protest against Brian Bosworth. But like I said, his company manufactured it, so he was laughing all the way to the bank. And you gotta give a man credit for that. Now, the Bernie Kosar situation was even crazier. This man's situation alone caused the supplemental draft to go to the lottery system that they use today. Back in 1984, Bernie Kosar won a national championship with the Miami Hurricanes. He had 2 years of eligibility left, but he was planning to graduate in 1985, the next year. So, the Buffalo Bills had the #1 pick. Anybody noticing a theme with Buffalo picking in the top 3? Buffalo had decided to take a defensive end, so the Vikings traded up to the #2 spot with the sole intentions of drafting Bernie Kosar. Now, this trade happened weeks before the draft. Bernie was an Ohio native, and he wanted to play for the Browns. So Bernie's agent told him not to file the paperwork for the normal draft and instead to enter the supplemental draft. See, the Vikings had traded up in the regular draft, but they still had their same position in the supplemental. In a pretty underhanded move, Cleveland then traded to the top of the supplemental draft. Bernie followed his agent's advice, didn't enter the regular draft, hopped in the supplemental, Cleveland picked him up, and boom. Other teams were so pissed, some of them even threatened to sue. The NFL commission at the time, Pete Rozelle, determined while it was a shady move, technically no rules had been broken. So Bernie Kosar went on to play for the Browns. He played the majority of his career there, making 2 Pro Bowls. And after 8 seasons, he was released by the Browns and got picked up by the Cowboys just in time to go win a Super Bowl as Troy Aikman's backup. Now, quickly as a bonus, I'll talk briefly about Josh Gordon's supplemental draft story. He basically got kicked out of Baylor, then chose to transfer to Utah after he got tired of driving on a drug-induced recruiting trip. He got sent home after trying cocaine for the first time, then decided to say to hell with it, let's try the supplemental draft. I know that sounds insane, but it is accurate, and I cover it in full detail in my 2-part series, What Happened to Josh Gordon Parts 1 and Part 2. If you haven't seen those, you gotta check them out. Josh Gordon's entire story is insane, and the supplemental draft portion of his story is also just as insane. Anyway, man, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget, bro, click the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're brand new. My name is FlemLo Raps. I'm holler at you next time. One. No way he makes this.
This is unreal.
Probability he makes this.
There's no way. 60 to 70%. He can make it from this range. Play easy. It's just like the pressure of the moment. Pressure of the moment's big, dude.
Hey, somebody call the governor.
Yo, this right here,
Ceiling.
it almost hit me.
It's too loud. Oh.
the Saints.
Not even the Saints.
Saints fans, do not throw anything from your seat.
Like he literally just incited it.
Someone just threw something on the field. I saw it.
What a letdown, man. Went from super loud to super quiet.
Yeah, I'm no quitter, 'cause I'ma go get it.